let me ask you a question. They say fruit is nature's candy, but what if candy could be nature's candy? One fresh new brand is gaining momentum with promises of plant-based, better-for-you candy, which leads me to ask, is healthy candy a reality, or is this brand just taking you for a joyride? Hello, Internet! Welcome to Food Theory, the show that's made with absolutely no junk, except in the trunk. And speaking of junk, I've been traveling a lot lately. For work, for fun, for running away from the authorities, you know, typical things for me. But flying means I don't necessarily eat the best stuff. I get whatever's hanging up in the overpriced store in whatever airport I'm in, because eating a Biscoff cookie for a 5-hour flight is like torture for me. This has usually meant a mixture of Nerds, Skittles, Snickers, Doritos, and mints, because after all that, I need them. But lately there's a new curly-headed sensation that's changed my go-to airport snack. Ryan Trahan, the king of reviewing one-star reviews, has invaded Candyland with his new candy product, Joyride, and business is booming. In just under a year, Joyride has catapulted itself to become the #2 selling sugary candy in all of Target, falling just short of Nerds and beating out the likes of Starburst, Skittles, Sour Patch Kids, and all the other candies that start with S. That's not only successful for a YouTuber product, my guy has become some sort of Gen Z Willy Wonka, winning the hearts and stomachs of customers everywhere, myself included. I'm telling you, the strawberry twists, his version of Twizzlers, are ridiculously addicting, and my personal favorite. His sour strips are a close second, but come on, Ryan, make them not all stick together in the bag. But the impressive sales aren't the only thing that sets Joyride apart from the rest of the candy industry. This candy is different.
No fake colors or junk ingredients. No junk ingredients. Fake colors and junk ingredients. We don't use fake anything. No fake colors, no junk ingredients.
That's right, Joyride isn't like all those other candy brands it left in its wake. It's got no fake colors, no junk ingredients, and as their website puts it, they're made with less sugar, no GMOs, and are apparently entirely plant-based. What does that even mean? Can I plant a little Joyride in the ground and grow myself a sour watermelon wedge patch? And combine that with all the other claims, is Joyride trying to make a healthy candy? I've seen the unhealthy thing but healthy shtick before, and it doesn't always work out so well. And hey, on this channel, we aren't a bunch of airheads. We're nerds. Oh, it burns! I hated that joke. Anyway, I always approach all these products with a healthy dose of skepticism. Under the hood of all that healthy advertisement, there's usually a junk-filled underbelly. So let's find out what a plant-based candy even is. What does it mean to have no junk ingredients? And whether or not Joyride has actually managed to create a candy that's healthy. So hold on to your red vines real tight, loyal theorists, as we swing from point to point to find out if Ryan has really revolutionized the candy experience, or if he really is just taking us all for a joyride. And so for our first question, yeah, actually, you know what? We're gonna be talking about Ryan Trahan's candy. Might as well jack his style too. Much better. So, the first thing that caught my attention when I bought my first pack of Joyride was right there on the front of the package. Plant-based candy. And my first question was, what does that even mean? Well, the Plant-Based Foods Association, a very real thing, apparently, seems like the right group to ask. According to them, a plant-based food means that the food in question is 100% free of animal ingredients. That means that all the ingredients must come from whole grains, nuts, veggies, fruits, or even fungi and algae. Basically, no meat. But wait, if Joyride is plant-based, does that mean that other candies contain meat? Oh god, is that what Swedish fish are made of? No, of course other candies don't actually have any meat in them, probably, but what many of them do have is ingredients that come from animals. Obviously, ingredients from animals can include things like milk and eggs, as you might expect, but there are some other ingredients found in most candies that you'd be surprised are not animal-free. Broadly speaking, most candies have 3 main types of ingredients: sweeteners and flavorings, textures, and coloring. And you'd be surprised how many of these other ingredients are not plant-based and manage to gummy worm their way into our favorite treats. Starting with sweeteners, many of the tastiest sweeteners are, in fact, plant-based. High fructose corn syrup, one of the most common sweeteners, is made from, you guessed it, corn. Raw cane sugar, similarly, is derived from sugarcane, a plant. But not all of the sugar you might grab from your cupboard actually fits the definition of plant-based. Many types of refined sugar use a process called bone charring to help give them that pristine white color. As the name suggests, bone char involves charring the bones of cows and the charred material is then used to remove impurities and pigments from the sugar, giving it that white color we tend to gravitate toward in the sugar aisle. Unfortunately, in the US, you can't tell from the food label whether your sugar was processed via bone char. But if, like Joyride, your product purports to be plant-based, then bone charring shouldn't be a part of the process. There are other sweeteners out there that you might not have realized are not plant-based either. Honey, for example, comes from bees, so technically it's not plant-based, and therefore you won't find it in Joyride or any other plant-based treat. So what types of sweeteners are they using? Looking at the back of a pack of sour blue raspberry strips, there are basically 4 ingredients that give it that sweet flavor. There's regular sugar, likely made without bone char, glycerin, and I'm almost 100% sure it's vegetable glycerin, a sweetener that can be extracted from things like soybeans and coconuts, stevia, a 0-calorie sweetener that comes from the stevia plant, and the biggest sweetener found in the candies, allulose. Allulose is a natural sweetener found in things like figs, raisins, and maple syrup. So check, all plant-based sweeteners. On to our next type of candy ingredient, texturizers. The stuff that gives candy its texture. Come on, that one was obvious. Texturizers give candy its shape, consistency, and mouthfeel. And there's one big ingredient that's found in many of our candies and desserts that a lot of you may not have known wasn't plant-based, and that's gelatin. That's right, the ooey gooey stuff we find in our jellos, marshmallows, and gummy bears comes from animals. Specifically, it's made by extracting collagen from the bones, cartilage, and skin of various animals, including cows, pigs, and fish. And so, if you're Joyride and you don't want to do that, you need an alternative. Introducing agar. That's right, the jelly you might find in your local scientist's petri dish is not only a solid alternative to gelatin, but it's made from seaweed and not boiling animal bones. And so it's time for our final type of ingredient, colorings. Now, we did a whole episode all about artificial colorings, so I don't want to go into too much depth about them here, but there are some natural colorings that candy companies will use, such as carmine, a natural red pigment that comes from crushed up cochineal insects. You'll usually find carmine in things like jelly beans, gummy bears, and lollipops, but not in Joyride's candies. Now, at this point, you might be thinking, hey, Santi, all this talk about ingredients being plant-based or made without animal products sure sounds a heck of a lot like being vegan. And 5 stars for you, because, yeah, they are more or less the same thing. Sure, the Plant-Based Foods Association does slightly distinguish between the two, but being plant-based or being vegan can more or less be used interchangeably. In fact, when it comes to Joyride, while its package confirms to be plant-based, their website FAQs also say it's vegan. But the most surprising thing I found while looking into this whole plant-based thing is that some of your favorite big-name candies are also plant-based and vegan. Airheads, Skittles, Sour Patch Kids, Twizzlers, and even Swedish Fish, not made of actual fish, is 100% animal product free, if that's the sort of thing you're really interested in. But it's not just being plant-based that sets Joyride apart. If you've seen any marketing for Joyride, particularly the stuff done by Ryan himself, you'll know that the biggest selling point they nail home is the fact that Joyride supposedly contains no junk ingredients. But what does that even mean? Well, first, if you take a look at the back of one of Trahan's treats, you'll find a few examples of what Joyride calls junk. First, it's the synthetic colors. But like I mentioned earlier, we've already done a video diving into the weird world of artificial food dyes, so we'll just pass on that for now. The other major type of ingredient you won't find in any of your Joyride candy is what they call sugar alcohols. Now, I know what you're thinking, and no, sugar alcohols are not Mai Tais or Pina Coladas. Those are sugary alcoholic drinks and delicious. Sugar alcohols are something slightly different. In chemistry, an alcohol is a compound that has what are known as hydroxyl groups, or an oxygen and hydrogen, OH, attached to it. For example, ethanol, the alcohol found in some of my favorite beverages, looks like this. Notice the OH. Sugar alcohols are what happens when you take a sugar and add an extra OH at the end. As a result of the process, sugar alcohols tend to be slightly less sweet and about half as many calories as their true sugar counterparts. This is why you'll often find sugar alcohols in foods and other products that advertise as sugar-free or no sugar added. But wait, if it's less calories and not as sweet as regular sugar, why does Joyride hate it? Well, there has been some research that suggests sugar alcohols aren't so sweet after all. The downsides of sugar alcohols are mainly found in your tum-tum. Consuming high amounts of sugar alcohols can lead to abdominal pain, diarrhea, and loose stools. Blech. This is mainly caused by the fact that sugar alcohols tend to be digested more slowly, meaning more gas production by your gut bacteria and more water pulled from your intestines, causing those symptoms. There has also been some early but concerning research into the potential long-term effects of some of these sugar alcohols. For example, research into xylitol and erythritol have shown a link between them and increased cardiovascular risks, like heart attack and stroke. So would I say that sugar alcohols are all junk? That's probably a bit too far for my taste. But there is something interesting about Joyride taking aim at sugar alcohols. alcohols. If you take a look at a lot of the candies near the top of the candy sales list, they don't actually use sugar alcohols. And when you think about it, that makes sense. If you're gonna make a high sugar, high calorie candy, why would you use something that's low in calories and not as sweet? That defeats the purpose. But if you're making something that's low in calories, like many of the top brands do with their zero or sugar-free options, you would use sugar alcohols. Joyride would say that there's a third path, where you can use sugar, just less of it, and still produce a candy that, in my honest opinion, still tastes pretty damn good. Sure, when you eat it, you can tell that there's something different about it, but maybe different is better. Which reminds me. So now we figured out what the heck a plant-based candy is and what junk ingredients Joyride avoids. But now it's time for the big question. Is Joyride healthy? I mean, just because something's plant-based doesn't mean it's good for you. Ask Tom over at Game Theory how my apple pie turned out. Oh, right, you can't see me. I keep forgetting that. He's allergic to apple, and he's not having a great time. Don't worry, I have the EpiPen right here. Somewhere. Maybe if you subscribe, it'll pop up. Anyway, let's start by taking a look at the good old-fashioned nutrition facts. We've already looked at the ingredients list to death, but what about the other stuff? The calories, the macros? Well, let's compare Joyride's flagship product, the Sour Blue Raspberry Strips, to their main rival, Sour Strips Blue Raspberry. I know, confusing names. But Sour Strips is the brand that Joyride just passed on their climb up the Target charts. They also have the same serving sizes, so it should be a fair comparison. Joyride's candy has 70 calories per serving, compared to Sour Strips 110. Joyride has just 4 grams of total sugars per 4 pieces, while Sour Strips has over quadruple that amount. On the flip side, Joyride does have slightly more sodium at 95 milligrams compared to 65, but both products are pretty low when it comes to sodium in general. Joyride also has a whopping 8 grams of dietary fiber per serving. Not only is that 29% of your daily serving of fiber in just 4 strips, but that's more fiber than you'll find in some products that market themselves as having fiber. Looking at you, Poppy! That being said, with all that fiber, I, and Joyride itself, wouldn't recommend scarfing down bags like there's no tomorrow. Unless you like your poops coming out like fully formed Tootsie Rolls. So what's the ruling? Has Joyride finally done it? Have they created the world's first candy that's healthy? Of course not. I mean, it's still candy. It doesn't matter if it's plant-based or junk ingredient free, it's still not good for you. But here's the thing, and why I actually want to give Joyride, Ryan, and their mascot Jerry their flowers. They never claimed to be healthy. Unlike so many other products, especially content creator products that claim to be the best or some sort of cure-all for all those things other products don't do for you, Joyride's pretty much saying, hey, no candy is good for you, but if you're going to indulge and have candy, ours is slightly better. It's honestly a breath of fresh air in the marketing world where everything is so heightened. There's a reason why it's selling so well and why people are gravitating towards it. The candy doesn't promise to transform your love life, Skittles. Instead, it's a product that's just being honest with them. All the fancy motion graphics and marketing slogans are stripped away like so many shiny wrappers on a picked-over Halloween haul, and what's left is some refreshing authenticity. And I can literally feel some of you typing in the comments, "You forgot to add hashtag ad!" Well, first, you're so creative. Look at you go. Second, I'm just calling things like I see them. And that doesn't always mean tearing down or exposing a company. Sometimes it's giving credit where credit is due. So I guess if we're gonna wrap up this little Ryan Trahan format, I'd give Joyride 5 stars. But hey, that's just a theory. Food theory. Buen provecho. And hey, did you know that Lucky the Leprechaun has lore? That's right, click the link on the screen now, and as always, I'll see you next week.